fine. I'm cool. I'm fine. Pain. Panic. Got a little riddle for you. How do you kill a god?
I do not know.
You can't. They're immortal?
Bingo! They're immortal. So, first you gotta turn the little sunspot mortal.
In 2007, the entire NFL had a serious problem, and it played right outside of Boston. After a couple of disappointing seasons by their standards, which basically just means that they didn't win the Super Bowl, the Patriots front office decided that it was time to retool the offense and put some more weapons around Tom Brady. The Pats' top pass catcher in 2006 was Rashae Caldwell. Not ideal, and the team as a whole hadn't had a 1,000-yard receiver since Troy Brown in 2001. No offense to guys like him or Deion Branch, but the Patriots had somehow had all of that Super Bowl success in the early 2000s without Tom Brady ever having an elite offensive weapon to get the ball to. And by 2007, that was starting to catch up to them. Teams like the Colts and the Chargers absolutely did have that caliber of player supporting their star quarterbacks, so if the Patriots didn't want to get left behind in the AFC arms race, they were going to have to make some moves. But it's not like those kinds of players are just out there growing on trees. The NFL has a salary cap and roster rules, and more importantly, a bunch of teams who are not about to just give their best players away to the Patriots. So to solve their playmaking problem, the Patriots would have to get creative, which, of course, they did. They got things going by trading a 2nd and a 7th round pick to the divisional rival Dolphins to acquire Wes Welker. Not exactly Larry Fitzgerald, but a decent start. Then they signed Dante Stallworth in free agency, a good player, but one that came with some baggage in the form of a nagging hamstring injury and a reported substance abuse issue. That's the kind of trade-off that the Pats were prepared to make to bring in playmakers for Brady, sacrificing things being straightforward for the level of talent that they felt they needed. And no acquisition represents that idea better than Randy Moss. At 30 years old, Moss was already a 3-time first-team All-Pro selection, but was also an all-the-time first-team All-Pro pain in the butt while he was in Oakland. It was not at all clear what was going to happen when all of these disparate pieces got thrown together into one offense, but regardless, this was the hand that the Patriots were playing, because they kind of had to. But basically, as soon as the season started, any concern about whether this was going to work or not went away in a hurry. The 2007 Patriots were a problem that no one in the entire NFL seemed to be able to solve. Like, not even a little bit. They didn't have a game where they scored fewer than 30 points until week 9. First in the NFL in total yards, first in the NFL in total points. Basically any offensive category you can think of, the Patriots were at or near the top, and as far as individual performances go, both Tom Brady and Randy Moss set records for touchdowns in a single season. Oh, and not for nothing, the team was undefeated going into the playoffs. Through some calculated risks and clever cap management, the new-look Patriots had solved all of their playmaking problems in one fell swoop and looked destined to continue wrecking everyone on their way to their 4th Super Bowl in 7 years. New England had become the Death Star, but anyone who's seen the original Star Wars movies knows that every one of those things inexplicably has a thermal exhaust port just waiting to be exploited if you can find it. And little to the Patriots' knowledge, there was a plucky group of rebels about 200 miles to the southwest that were ready to make their trench run. What does it take to take down Tom Brady? In 2007, not many seemed to know. How would you even do it? Not by having an amazing defense, apparently. Not by having an amazing offense either. Not even by having a team that had won the Super Bowl the year before. Beating peak Tom Brady when it mattered most would seemingly require both an outstanding team and the absolute perfect game plan to go along with it, all of which would need to come together at the exact right time without any major mistakes. But what would the perfect plan for stopping Brady at the peak of his powers even look like? Well, for starters, it might look like stocking up on the one thing that no quarterback can overcome, which is the fact that you can't throw the ball to anyone if you're already on the ground. And without really meaning to, the New York Giants had quietly been creating the perfect anti-Brady machine for years by acquiring and developing a group of players that could put him there. It would take the perfect storm of team building to form a group that could consistently frustrate Brady's Patriots, especially this version of them. But this Giants team had it. They were pretty good all around. Eli Manning was fine, when he threw the ball to the correct team anyway, but Brandon Jacobs had a breakout year in 2007, and the defense was good enough that they didn't need a ton of points to be successful. But lurking beneath the surface, this Giants team had what I can only describe as a superpower, which was an uncanny ability to get to the quarterback, and that was no accident. The Giants had been slowly and methodically adding pieces to their defensive front for quite a while. The heartbeat of this unit was, of course, Michael Strahan, who was playing his last season of what would become a Hall of Fame career in 2007. Osi Umenyiora, who the Giants had drafted back in 2003, made his second Pro Bowl that year and was continuing to establish himself as one of the best defensive ends in football. Having two bookend pass rushers of that caliber would be enough to scare the bejesus out of most teams on its own, but add in the emergence of Justin Tuck, who had 10 sacks that season in just his third year, and the contributions of linebackers like Kavika Mitchell and Matthias Kiwanuka, and the Giants had a small army of guys who could get to the quarterback. The Patriots may have led the league in most offensive categories, but the Giants were doing the exact same thing when it came to getting sacks and pressures. So when they met up in one of the more unexpected Super Bowls in recent memory, one of those two things was seemingly going to have to give. Two things seemed pretty certain going into that game. First, the Patriots were heavily favored to win and complete the first 19-0 season in the history of the league. Pretty much everyone agreed about that. But second, if the Giants did want to pull the upset, they weren't going to be able to do so by playing the way the Patriots wanted them to. They'd already tried that in Week 17 of the regular season, and although they came pretty close to winning, as close as anyone did that whole year, they still lost. But perhaps because of their experience in that game, the Giants determined that if they wanted to win their first Super Bowl since 1991, they weren't going to be able to do it by going toe-to-toe with Tom Brady. But they didn't have to. They didn't even have to make Brady play all that badly, as it turned out. They just had to make him mortal. Super Bowl 42 started with a 16-play, 9-minute-long drive by the Giants that ended in a field goal. Tom Brady can't hurt you if he's on his butt, but he also can't hurt you if he never gets the ball in the first place. It wasn't sexy, but as they would continue to do over the course of this game, the Giants were doing exactly what needed to be done to slow the Patriots down. There was an element of serendipity to this performance, and the one that would come a few years later, that I don't think we can afford to ignore. Anytime the Giants absolutely had to have a play, whether it was a third down conversion in the first quarter or a score in the fourth, they got it. Did the Giants get lucky in a few spots? Absolutely, but you have to be in a close enough game for luck to matter. Which brings us back to the seemingly impossible task of stopping the Patriots' offense. In Super Bowl 42, Tom Brady went 29-48 with 266 yards and a touchdown. Not too bad in a vacuum, especially in the biggest game of the season against a defense like the Giants had. In Super Bowl 46, a few years later, he had a total QBR of 84. That's very good, and yet, the Giants held the Patriots to an average of 15.5 points between those two games, way lower than their average for either one of those seasons. How is that possible? Because you can't make a big play if you're running for your life every other time you snap the ball. The Giants sacked Brady 7 times between those two games, but they hit him 17 times and hurried him into poor throws and checkdowns even more than that. Even on the plays where they didn't bring pressure, the Giants were in Brady's head so much that he was missing throws that he would normally make without a second thought. Here's a perfect example of how the Giants pulled this off. Randy Moss was a non-factor in Super Bowl 42, mostly because the Giants' pass defense was doubling him throughout the entire game. Brady, because he's a smart guy, was like, okay then, I'm just gonna throw it to Wes Welker underneath. But the Giants were like, do it then. The end zone is way over there. Welker had 11 catches for 103 yards in that game, but it barely mattered. That was exactly what the Giants wanted. They had the perfect recipe for keeping Brady in check, and all night long, it made the GOAT and his team look very uncharacteristically uncomfortable. The outcome of this game, and the one that would come 4 years later, is some of the best evidence out there for what I consider to be an absolute bedrock principle of team building. The Giants weren't the best team in either of the years that they won the Super Bowl, but they did arguably have the strongest team identity, which, if implemented correctly, can carry a team's talent a lot further than it might have gone otherwise. Across sports, if a team commits to a style of play or a style of player, and then structures the way they evaluate talent around that style, then the worst thing they're going to be in the long term is coherent, if not spectacular. And in the mid-2000s, Giants GM Ernie Accorsi decided that, hey, you know what? We're going to be the team that can sack the quarterback. And we're going to pump a bunch of draft capital and free agent money into our defensive line and backfield to make sure that that comes through. I said earlier that the Giants' pass rush was their superpower, and I feel like that's pretty accurate, because in 2007 and 2011, these guys made the greatest quarterback of all time look like some random guy trying to impersonate Tom Brady, and honestly, not doing that great of a job. The Giants ended up winning Super Bowl 42 after scoring a touchdown on the last drive, thanks in part to an incredible catch and throw. And then did basically that exact same thing in Super Bowl 46. It absolutely should be said that Eli Manning had two of the best performances of his entire career in these two games, but let's be real. The Giants won because they had the exact right formula for slowing down the Patriots' offensive machine. Grind it out on offense, chew up as much clock as you can, and then let that incredible front seven do its thing. And while it took them several years to put it together, that formula had been a part of the Giants' team-building strategy the entire time. This was the result, but the groundwork for it had been laid a long time before either one of these games kicked off. I'm not saying that your team committing to a long-term strategy is going to solve all of their problems. Players don't work out and guys get injured, and there are a ton more variables that can ruin the best laid plans before they even get off the ground. But it's a very good place to start, because while every team that adopts an identity doesn't automatically become a champion, basically every team that wins a championship, or even multiple championships, starts with an identity. And as exceptional as they were in both of the Super Bowls that they ended up winning, Eli Manning's Giants were no exception to that idea. Hey everybody, happy Super Bowl week. I think I'm supposed to call it like Big Game Week or something, but I've never really understood how all of that works. But in any case, the NFL consistently has one of the best championship games in sports, and I'm super excited to watch it. If you don't know already, I'm Will, and this is Student of the Game. If you like the video, please do give it a like and even subscribe to the channel, as both of those go a long way to helping new people find us. While you're at it, go ahead and put your favorite Super Bowl memory in the comments, because there really are a ton of good ones to choose from. I look forward to reading them, but for now, that's all we've got for you. See you next time.